is a star that lights the road. I take this ride. Just drive. I wanna be the only one to make it to the light. I take it to the edge where I lived 1,000 lives. Maybe I could be the one. I'll rise to the setting sun tonight. Just drive.
The opening day of the final test here in Barcelona, and Lewis Hamilton had a productive afternoon in the Mercedes after a frustratingly damp morning. Mark Webber in the end was quickest, and today a first glimpse of home favourite Fernando Alonso, reigning world champion Sebastian Vettel, and the only Brit we didn't see yesterday, Jenson Button. We're back in Barcelona then for day 2 of testing. Again, if you have the facilities at home, we're available in 3D as well as in HD. The new season fast approaching, just 16 days till lights out in Melbourne. Hello everybody, welcome to day 2 of testing from a chilly Barcelona. Rain was forecast today. They were out on the wets and the inters early, but despite a few dark clouds around, it looks like, hopefully, we'll be getting a couple of hours of uninterrupted running this afternoon. Now, if you've got the right TV at home, for the first time in 3D, Lewis Hamilton and Martin Brundle looking pretty good, and for the first time we've seen you live in your new team colours. Yeah, how are you settling in?
It's great, really. First, it's good to see you guys. And no, it feels fantastic. It's obviously a new experience for me. Very strange arriving at the test, the first test at least, and driving past a McLaren truck and going on to a different truck. But really getting used to it. And I quite like my new gear.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
You're pretty dapper.
And the new car's not too bad either, is it, from what I'm hearing?
It isn't bad. It isn't bad. The guys have clearly done a better job this year. And I mean, obviously I didn't drive the previous year's car, but it was quite a long way off. I think we've got to obviously, if everyone else has put on a second or second and a half, this team has to put on two and a half seconds. So I'm hoping that we've caught at least half of what we needed to do.
Lewis, you're saying, sorry, Martin, you're saying that the strength of this car is the engine, obviously Mercedes engine, and perhaps the weakness is the downforce. That's the main area you've got to improve upon.
Yeah, I mean the riding ability and the mechanical ability is quite good. I think it's got quite a lot of grip there, but I think on the other side, the downforce is where we definitely can improve on, and that's what the guys are working on. But they're doing a fantastic job, I think, so far.
So only one car per team at a test. A bit frustrating. I mean, Formula 1 spends a lot of money, but you're a spectator today. We're very pleased you are, because you can come and talk to us. And thank you for doing that. But
it's one of the first times I've been a spectator on a test. So.
Yeah, it's a bit frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure exactly why, but yeah, it was cool back in the day when there was. I mean, at the end of 2006, I tested and we had 2 cars, and it was pretty decent. And you got through so much more. Yeah, so
being mobbed, surrounded here. Yeah, I mean, what about the weather though? I mean, we're not used to this, are we? I mean,
yeah, I mean,
it's 5 degrees.
We lost a couple of days in Jerez. Obviously, the first 2 days with failures, we've picked up on that. But obviously, we're trying to get as much ground as possible. That's the aim of the game. The more mileage you can get on the car, the more you can test out all the reliability issues, and you can find them basically. And I mean, yesterday, even though it was raining, we got 113 laps. So I'm hoping today Nico will get some laps as well.
Isn't it a bit irrelevant in a way? I mean, it's so cold today. If the tyres work today, you'd actually be worried, because they won't be any good when we get to Bahrain and places like that. So
yeah.
You must get to the end of the day and have to put a big fudge factor into everything you discuss and decide that you've learned.
Definitely, but I mean, of course, you're trying to understand the tyres, but yeah, we have to take it with a pinch of salt, because we know that when we go to Australia, the surface is different, the temperature is going to be different. But we're just trying to really get to. I'm trying to get to grips with the new car, with the new steering wheel, with the way the team operates is a lot different to where I was before. So, but I feel like I'm kind of getting up to speed quite quickly.
You found the handbrake yet?
We've got some serious brake bias. We've got like 10 different positions or something compared to my all 3.
Hey Lewis, you got a new best friend with you this year. He's getting a
Yeah.
lot of attention, your bulldog Roscoe. I was going to bring him a
is.
sausage, but I was banned from doing that. All this attention going to his head, or is he keeping his paws
No,
on the ground?
he's
so to
not
speak?
phased by anything, like anything. The only thing he's phased by, or he gets really happy with, is when he's getting his food. That's the only thing he cares about, is sleep and food. That's what he does. He's just in the truck just now.
He would love to have a glimpse of him in 3D at some point.
Yeah,
Maybe you can bring him out for a walk a little
come
bit
and
later.
follow me if you want.
Okay, we will do. Martin?
Yeah, so tomorrow then and Sunday, last 2 days, have you got lots of new bits coming? And will you leave here with your Melbourne car intact as such?
Yeah, so usually, and it's the same when I was at McLaren, and I'm sure it's the same for all the teams. This is where they bring the final, well, the final development package for Melbourne. And of course, between now and Melbourne, they'll try and add some other small bits. But the big pieces like the floor, like the rear wing, the front wing, those things come here. And it's a perfect way to flow vis them. So they put that liquid on the car to get pictures and try and make sure there's correlation between the wind tunnel and the track, and also for the driver to get a feel of what it's going to be like.
You still get caught up in, you've been around long enough now, you've heard, oh, it's got this many more points of downforce and less drag. Are you in the position now where you get really excited about that, or like, let's wait and see how it feels on the track?
I know, I get really excited about it. But I also know that, say, if they say you're bringing 2 tenths, maybe it's 1 if it works on the track. But still, every point of downforce they bring, I get excited about, because that's you feel that when they put two points of downforce on the car, you notice it through the corners, and so I'm always pushing for that little bit extra.
Nico's out there today. Just want to ask you about your teammate. You've known him for a long time, since you're about 12, something like that, haven't you? So,
Yeah, I met Nico when I was 13.
Right. Okay. So you feel like an old.
And we had competition from the get-go. He used to ride a unicycle through the paddock, so then I had to ride a unicycle through the paddock. So I learned to ride this unicycle, and I did it so that I could do it backwards and all these different ways. And we used to play a lot of tricks on each other. So some of the stories I would hear about Prost and Senna and all the old Gerhard Berger, we kind of had that when we were in karting. So it'll be interesting to see what we have now we're in here in Formula 1.
I remember you two turning up in the paddock in F1 when you were 13 or 14.
Germany.
You had so much confidence, and you were shiny, walking into the motorhomes with total and utter confidence. And I thought, those two are going to Formula 1. Did you think that the same at the time?
No, of course not. I didn't think I had confidence. I thought I was quite shy when I was young, but
you two rocked up looking pretty like in control of the situation.
Hey, look,
Wow.
he's had 3 years in this car, though. Has he offered you any advice? Would you take any advice from Nico?
we share advice, to be
Yeah.
honest. Like today, this morning, we're at the just back in the truck here, and he was saying, what's the line in the wet? So, and I can tell him. I mean, it doesn't make no difference if I tell him or not. If he did ask me, is turn 3 flat out in the wet? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So,
On the outlap.
But he's driving my car today, and I was driving his car, and I took it through the gravel twice. So he said his challenge is to take mine through the gravel 3 times.
So an open exchange of ideas, though. That's what we like to hear between the pair of you. Lewis, it's fantastic to have you here. We're just going to update you, if we could, on the driver lineups today. As we said, there's only 11 cars out there, and therefore 11 drivers. 3-time world champion Vettel is out in the Red Bull. Fernando Alonso takes his turn in the very decent-looking F138. Jenson Button, very much the McLaren lead driver this year. The top 3 alternating drivers over the 4 days. Lotus going with Grosjean again today. Kimi over the weekend. It's Rosberg, as we were saying, in the Mercedes. Hulkenberg in the Sauber. Adrian Suttle, having been confirmed as this year's other Force India driver yesterday, gets only his 2nd day of practice. It's Maldonado for Williams, Ricciardo in the Toro Rosso, Guido van der Garde in the Caterham, and Max Chilton again in Marussia. Rumour is that there's a seat fitting for a potential new teammate tonight. We'll keep across that. Lewis, plans for the rest of the week, though, just before we join the guys in commentary for the rest of the weekend. What have you got to get through?
So we've got the new components coming. So
Yeah,
Nico's
yeah.
already testing something today, and then tomorrow hopefully we have a better day. Hopefully we got a couple of days of sunshine coming, and in those days really trying to probably doing pit stops, race procedures, and really trying to get as many laps as we can, and also just trying to see where the car is needing to improve.
What about rivals this year? Just as I said, just before we go up there, I mean, you've had a look at all the cars now. Which do you think is looking the strongest out there?
Well, you just know, even if You just know that Red Bull's going to be quick because obviously they've had a quick car for the last few years. The car's going to be an evolution this year. You know that Adrian and his team have for sure put together a good package. I know that McLaren would have put together a good package again. So to be honest, I envisage those two being massively competitive this year.
Okay, well, it's lovely to have you here. Thanks very much for joining us. We will take you up on that offer of a walk with your dog at some point. Fantastic stuff. Cheers, Lewis. Thanks for the moment. Right, let's head upstairs then to commentary. Johnny Herbert is there and he's alongside David Croft.
Thank you, Simon. Good afternoon, everybody. You go walk that dog. I'll look after the puppy that is Johnny Herbert for a while. I have to say, no rain this afternoon. We're keeping our fingers crossed whilst we say that, but the forecast, despite the clouds, is really good. That we're not going to get any rain. We are going to get some track action, and Lewis Hamilton's spot on. Tomorrow the sunshine comes, and tomorrow the teams can start to learn some proper information, Johnny Herbert, because at the moment, even though we're getting laps in, I don't think these conditions are telling the teams really what they want with, what, 2.5 days to go of testing now?
Well, no, they're not. You know, we're lucky that the weather hasn't come, that everybody was talking about more rain coming for today. That hasn't happened, obviously. But the track is still green, so once that rubber starts to lay itself down, that's really the only time these guys are going to have a bit of an idea of how they're going to have to respond, especially with his tyres, which seems to be everybody's talking about once again. And like Lewis is saying, there's some new bits on the car that Nico is running at the moment, and over the next couple of days they will continue to turn up for them.
Out on track at the moment, we just saw Daniel Ricciardo in the Toro Rosso coming out of the pits. Pastor Maldonado, Adrian Sutil, Nico Rosberg, and as you can see, Jenson Button just making his way up. Seemed to have that downforce that maybe they were enjoying the benefit of last year.
Yeah, there does seem to be a little bit where both drivers, Sergio and Jenson, seem to have sort of up and down days in the car. If we look at it as we are at the moment, the last sort of 20 minutes or so, Jenson's been on some runs, and they started off very quick. He went fastest with a 23.9 very early on, and of course now he's up in the 28s. But Sebastian Vettel did some runs earlier on, and he sort of started slower and didn't ease off as much, but the gap is still quite different. But the car, yes, you're right, doesn't seem to be quite balanced to their liking yet.
And looking at those tyres, and we're getting a great shot through the chicane here. If you're watching that in 3D as well, an even better shot as Jenson Button dives into the pits. You can see that McLaren is having graining problems, despite over the first lap of its run being quite quick. This is live testing coverage. Let's bring you up to date with the story so far today, because our cameras have been out in all weathers from 9 o'clock this morning, where Fernando Alonso took to the track, to the delight of the Spanish fans. Quite a few of them have made the trek to the circuit of Catalonia today, but it really was quite horrible. First thing on it, horrible compared to last night. It was an absolute storm in Barcelona, but as you can see, the track really wet as Alonso and then Button took out in the wet weather tyres. No real meaningful running at all in the first half hour today. And Nico Rosberg, even when the switch was made to the intermediate, still finding it very, very slippy, very tricky indeed. Down at turn 5, Daniel Ricciardo stopping on track and his car having to be recovered. Red flag, which you get a lot of in testing anyway, forcing everyone back into the garages. Still damp when Sebastian Vettel came out in his Red Bull. And where's he going off? Once again at turn 5. Quickly back to the garage once again for the 3-time world champion. And as ever with Red Bull, as soon as that car comes into the pits, the mechanics on hand to cover up all the interesting bits at the rear. Pastor Maldonado returning to the racetrack that he won at in 2012, slipping and sliding away. Ricciardo once again, and then a scheduled stop out on track, a non-specific stop simulation for Romain Grosjean in the Lotus. Jenson Button was the fastest man on track this morning. Adrian Sutil had gone quickest. Button then took over at the top, and he is still the quickest man out on the track with a 1:23.9, which is the time Johnny put in on the first lap of his last run. It was a 7-lap run, 6 of them timed. But by the time he came into the pits, that 1:23.9 had turned into a 1:27.9, a 1:28.1 and a 1:28.3.
Yeah, that's on the medium compound, which most of the runners have been on. Sebastian Vettel did a run earlier on the hard tyres, and he basically started around the sort of 28 mark, but he ended up in the 28 mark. So they seem to be a big consistent. Sorry, did a 27.8. as good as a 28, but he was very consistent. Maldonado is actually on track at the moment with hard tyres as well. He's in the 29, so there is that variation we're seeing. And you're right, Crofty, with that left rear, we did see a lot of graining once again, typical Barcelona of graining here, which is something that you've got to try and control, and it's a very hard
afternoon, and we'll see how long the Lotus is going to be out. I said that they performed a non-specific stop simulation today out on the track. It's just one of those little quirks that happen in testing. Cars seem to stop all over the place. We saw the Ferrari stop on the past Lovick. You want to test things to the limit and get your fuel calculations right, because it's fine to be stopping and running out of fuel here. You don't want to be doing it in Abu Dhabi necessarily.
No, you don't. No, again, they always do these low sort of running out of fuels just to see how much fuel they can actually run into, and that's just something they need to know, because that's all those calculations that they can go into qualifying. For example, the calculations in the race, where you can actually run out of fuel actually after the start-finishing line. So you need to know what you can run. If there's still, I don't know, a litre...
Still at work this afternoon, and you've got your Sky Goes on, and you're trying to do a little bit of work and trying to keep up to date with the Formula One as well. Mark S, who's tweeted us at hashtag SkyF1, says, I'm trying to watch live testing via my Sky Go, but the office broadband is useless. I guess I'll do my job then. No, I think you should persist on this one. And I want to know from as many of you as possible, hashtag SkyF1, where are you watching this afternoon? What is your Formula One watching experience like, be it via your 3D glasses or your HD TV or your standard definition or your Sky Go, whatever? I want to know where you are watching the Formula One this afternoon. Keep your tweets coming in, because we love them here. Luke, good afternoon to you. He says, Lewis seems so much nicer since joining Mercedes. I don't know about that. I think he's always been a really nice guy. The word I'd use, Johnny, actually is relaxed after watching that interview.
You stole my word as well, yes.
Sorry, think of another then.
No, I think relaxed he is, and I think he seems to be, you just see it in his face, can't you? He seems to be very happy where he's at the moment. He knows there's a lot of work ahead to get that team into a situation of winning races and winning a world championship, which is what he's after. But I think he feels with everyone that's behind him at the moment, he's in a place that he feels that he can achieve that. But that work is going to be very tough, but he's not shy from that.
Commentary box, he's just said in my ears, everyone and his dog. that dog is going to become a Twitter sensation throughout the course of this year, and I can see us talking an awful lot about it. But a lot of you want to know more about this Mercedes car. Whilst we watch Grosjean going round, I was on the Sky Sports F1 website this morning, and we're having a bit of a web chat. Many questions about why Mercedes. Simple, it's because they want mileage in that Mercedes, and they want to concentrate on getting laps in and having a consistent tyre, or as consistent a tyre as they possibly can. And they kind of feel that the soft is not going to give you any consistency at all. Their testing work so far purely and simply about getting as many miles on the clock as they possibly can, and that kind of bears out with what Lewis has done so far. 2,040 kilometres worth of testing during the 5 days he's been in the car, which is equal to about 7 Grand Prix. So other than the first 2 days, they've actually been getting a lot of miles on the clock.
Yeah, and I think it's a very sensible way of going around it. You know, we know about what happened last year, the way the car was very hard on its tyre.
Mercedes here, the soft tyre obviously will give you a faster lap, opening lap, initial lap, time lap than the medium. But after lap 2, the medium tyre starts to become quicker, and after 7 laps, there's about 4 seconds.
And I think the conditions is the word, because the way this track has been with the dampness has been quite difficult. But as I said, it's green at the moment, the rubber will go down, and that will improve over the next couple of days.
So Romain Grosjean continues on his way, continuing to plod up and down the pit lane, as he will do at every session during the course of this forthcoming F1 season. Is Ted Kravitz. Good afternoon, Ted.
Hello, David. Hello, everybody. Yes, down here at McLaren with Sporting Director Sam Michael. Sam, tell us, how's your programme gone? What are you up to today with Jenson Button?
Well, a lot of today, it obviously started off wet, so we did ready for Melbourne. There's just so many things to sign off before you get to the first race. We've still got a long list, so really the wet weather doesn't affect it just like that. It's now full dry, so we're into our normal test programme.
Okay, so what does a normal test programme for today involve? Have you got new bits? I haven't seen too many new bits. You're going to put some new bits on tomorrow and Saturday and Sunday?
Basically, most of the Melbourne aero package is here at the moment. We've got some parts now. We chose not to run them this morning just because we've only got one off, so we don't want to damage them because of the track conditions. Those parts are going on the car now, and they'll steadily go on the car over the next 2 days. So by the time we get through to tomorrow, it'll have everything on it.
Okay, that's good to hear. Jensen and Sergio actually have been talking about a bit more understanding needed in the car. Sometimes it delivers a brilliant lap, fastest of anybody, and then sometimes it doesn't. Are you any closer to understanding the car?
Well, I think what happens, obviously, there's a lot of, at the moment the track temperatures are quite cold, and it's very different to what happens when you go racing. So the tyres and the cars work in quite a different way to what happens at Grand Prix. What that means is if you happen to get the tyre right into the sweet spot, then you can do a fantastic lap time, and if you're off it, you can be very poor. So it's happening with all the teams, and I think with the conditions here now as well, with the rain coming and going and the wind, it makes it even worse. So I think it's their comments are related to that. So it's just a matter of going up and down. It's not an unusual thing that happens in winter. But the main thing that we're doing at the moment is just focusing on getting through the major core things and not the sort of finer details of setup that you tend to do on the race weekend. So to get through the program, you don't have time to stop and fine-tune everything. So what they're saying is entirely normal, and it's just part of winter testing.
Okay, just David, Sam's got the cans on, so you can actually ask him a question. That was the Red Bull Racing going out in the background. Just last one from me. The season hasn't started. You've already got a new technical director in the form of Tim Goss, his long-term guy who sits up on the pit wall with you. Paddy Lowe, of course, is off to Mercedes. That story well discussed. But disruption?
It's been quite a... If you think about the strength and depth in McLaren, it's been quite a natural transition for Tim to take over that role. Tim's been responsible for the last two cars and the cars 4 and 6 years ago as well. He's obviously proven himself to be very confident. He's a very determined individual. Very much focused on doing the job properly inside McLaren. In terms of the change from day-to-day operations, it's really quite seamless because Tim does a lot of that role anyway. So it's involved some restructuring, and it's been great working with Paddy, and he's made a massive contribution to McLaren over almost 20 years, and wish him all the well at Mercedes in 2014.
Good afternoon, Sam. How are you?
Good afternoon, Ted. I'm very good, thanks.
David.
Ted, now this is dropped you up in the commentary box, and that'll be the last time you confuse us two during the course of this year.
I said that without moving my
Sorry.
lips.
It's because I was looking straight at him.
Yeah, he has that presence about him. Sam, how is it that McLaren managed to lose someone like Paddy Lowe from the technical staff? How is it that you didn't manage to keep hold of him? Was it all about money and then the size of the cheque that Mercedes are offering?
Well, I think there's obviously, as you'd be fully aware, David, we're not really in a position where we discuss contracts in public. They're things that are done privately between the team and the individual, and that's something that really is between Paddy and Mercedes now.
But aside from the money, was it Paddy's ambition, or was it that their opening wasn't there at McLaren, or what? Because I know you have a managerial structure that
new now, so we wish him all the best.
Thanks ever so much, Sam. Sam Michael with us there.
Thank you,
I'm gonna move on because Martin Brundle's joined us in the commentary box as well, and he's still got his 3D glasses on. So you must be enjoying the experience. Good afternoon, mate.
Hello. I thought that's what we were doing. Sitting watching the 3D picture here. I quite like it.
I
like it a lot.
The style of Charlie
Is that a complaint?
Steinman.
Are you making a complaint?
No, I'm just saying you're in front of the 3D screen. And Charlie Steinman at home's watching wrapped up on the sofa. You could have brought a blanket with you. It's quite chilly today.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? It's nice to be able to just watch the cars going round and focus on them and just not having to cut away to too much other action as such. This is what obviously testing's all about, and it's fascinating in the paddock actually how much time people have got for us, and there's a lot of interesting stuff going on down there, to say the least.
Well, there is. Let's try and bring you all up to date with some of the testing pointers that we've come up with so far from you. Mark Hughes, GP editor at Autosport, has given us a few testing pointers based basically on what we saw yesterday, and we didn't see as much as the teams would like us to have seen yesterday. But for Mark Webber, who was in the Red Bull on the Thursday, his long run pace allows to try and delve too much into the times, because the track was getting significantly quicker lap after lap as the afternoon went on. But certainly Mark Webber quickest in the demanding middle sector. We're into the final sector now with Sebastian Vettel, but Webber was motoring through that middle sector. Lewis Hamilton, when we made the switch to slicks in the damp conditions, looked very much at home in that Mercedes. Also, I have to say, on the intermediate, Jean-Eric Vergne was very quick in the morning as well. But that McLaren, quick, but plagued by understeer, which if you're Jenson Button is not a pointer that you would want.
No, I think they better hope that when the temperatures are more in a range that they expect these tyres to switch on. I was talking to Paul Hembry at Pirelli, and he said that a lot of them are running around their 65 degrees centigrade, and the ingredients of the tyres are not designed to switch on until at least 75 degrees centigrade, and of course optimum is somewhere near 90 to 100. So the tyres are not working, they scrape across the racetrack and they roll up into little balls of rubber rather than gripping into the track itself. And you know, the problem is it the temperature, is it the car setup? Others are making it work, some are not. And I think a few alarm bells are definitely going off on the longer runs.
And Johnny, that Lotus potential, and there is potential in that Lotus, disguised by a hydraulics issue yesterday. They didn't get yesterday the running that they wanted because of the weather, because of that hydraulics issue.
No, they didn't. And don't go there again, Crofty. We started this last year, didn't we? Lotus, and it never materialised. But Roman has looked quite good out there, and the car itself generally has been reliable. The car seems quite balanced. The tyres actually look quite good on it, and those graining tyres that we have had, McLaren especially, I think for both drivers is something that they don't want. They need a car, especially Sergio, speaking to his engineer from last year at Sauber, he's very good at controlling the car at the back, and he needs a car that he can actually do that. If he's got a car that's very much sort of difficult on the front end, it's very hard to back.
He was saying, we don't really understand this car fully yet. It's a bit surprising because they put it on the track like a Sky Electric car, didn't they, at the first test? Did a stunning lap time on the first day. But I think now they've got into some longer runs, there seems to be a bit of head scratching, and the feeling is that they're not up there with this car, Red Bull, of course.
And there's very much a feeling from the people you talk to in the paddock that we can speculate, we can surmise, and trust me, we will do for the next 2.5 days, but we might actually not know the true pecking order until we get to Australia, which is superb. Lovely slide round there from Sebastian Vettel through turn 13. Good afternoon to Alex Ball, who says we've just closed the office to go home and watch the F1 practice. Good afternoon to all of you who say that you're sitting at home writing dissertations and doing your homework whilst the F1's on. We're doing our homework ahead of the new season. It's testing here in Barcelona. Down the main straight comes the Toro Rosso of Daniel Ricciardo. Behind him, Romain Grosjean, who on his previous lap hit a 1:22.7, fastest time we've set today. Last lap was a 1:24.5. Martin Brundle, we were talking about soft tyres giving you one lap performance and then rapidly going off in these conditions, and those 2 laps might just bear that out.
Yeah, let's see if he was just cooling them down a bit, see what he does on this lap. But there are long corners here in Barcelona. It's a real tester of the tyres and the chassis, and that is why the teams like coming in. If they need parts overnight, they can ship stuff out quickly, and they know the track very well indeed, and they know it challenges the car and the driver. And with these long, fast corners, it's like Silverstone. You can't carry the car does it or it won't, and you really do learn a lot about it. It's as we know from this track at the Grand Prix, often it's a Noah's Ark grid, isn't it? 2 by 2 down the grid, because if your chassis is working, it really makes a big difference. And no big straights here, really, apart from the pit straight, but and that's still dictated by traction, and largely out of this awful chicane they put in a few years back that took away 2 of the best corners in Formula 1. But traction there can affect your straight line speed anyway, so it's all about the corners. And as he goes over the line, it's even slower on a 27.2. So the degradation there is quite massive.
Yeah, so for all of you asking why Mercedes haven't been running the soft tyres, and I gave you the answer as the fact that they think the medium just holds up better, gives them more consistency and comparisons over a long run. Maybe Lotus, who are running probably their own definitely their own program, but something a little different to Mercedes at the moment, have just given us the answer there. I noticed just watching on track, as Grosjean came out of turn 11 up to the top of the hill, and then the right-hander at 12, really struggling at the rear to keep that car where he wanted as he put the foot down, and the tyres going off quite alarmingly.
It's a lot of voodoo tyre composition as such, but it's a bit confusing, as they often can be, because you'd think a soft tyre would switch on to these conditions and actually be okay. You'd think it'd be the harder tyre that just slid across the surface and grained up. So a driver, especially as you're using the fuel up, it's about 1/10 of a second per lap the fuel is worth as you burn through it, and the drivers should be consistent enough that you'd expect them to lap within 1/10 or 2 every lap, basically. So to go 2 seconds slower means that the tyre falls away massively. But as we said a while back, the track temperatures are very low, and the tyres are not designed to work here, and it just keeps begging the question, as we talked to Lewis about at the top of the show. And we used to head off to Kyalami and Rio for 10 days with 2 cars and go and test in representative conditions. Now we can't afford to do that for whatever reason, and these are about reliability tests as much as anything, because they expect the tyres to be completely different when we chase the sun, as the Formula 1 season does.
Well, they certainly will be by the time they put the soft and hard tyres on, which I assume it'll be soft and hard when we come back here in May. While we're looking at Romain Grosjean and his car, let's just have a little chat about the man himself. 2012, peaks and troughs. There were peaks, there were podiums, but the troughs were his accidents, and a lot of first corner incidents that he got himself rather caught up in, and resulted, of course, in that one race ban. Is this his last chance in Formula 1? If he has another season like last season, might Lotus look elsewhere for 2014? Your thoughts on this, Martin? And we were talking about this morning on the way into the track. The fact that he's been seeing a psychologist and openly admitting that, does that show a strength, that he feels that's the way that I should be dealing with the problems I've got, or a weakness that other drivers might exploit? But he's definitely going to become a dad in August, and that might have pressures associated with it as well. It's as many of you on paternal leave watching today will tell you, trying to focus while bringing up a child is never easy at the best of times. So lots to talk about with Romain Grosjean.
Yes, you want to talk about that now?
Yeah, go on.
I had 2 children while I was a Grand Prix driver, well, my wife did, more to the point, and I think you're pretty focused and selfish, and you just get on with doing. Don't think you start lifting the throttle because you've got a child. This is what you do for a living, and if it's pouring around, you can't see where you're going. You press the throttle a little bit harder. Somewhat later in life, other factors seem to come into play, but don't see that being a problem. It is unusual. It's seen as weak in motorsport to have a sports psychologist. I mean, in tennis or golf,
they all do.
You parade them around and change them and let everybody know that you've changed your coach and maybe your sports psychologist.
Formula 1, if it exists.
Yeah, I think it is really, isn't it? And it's just it's seen as a weakness. If Senna didn't really need one, or Alan Jones, or Keke Rosberg used to have a cigarette just before we went out to qualify. That seemed to be all he needed. But it's interesting he's done that. I think he's right to have done something about it, because it was no coincidence he had so many first lap crashes last year. I saw something very interesting at the American Grand Prix in Austin that I thought was indicative of where he's going wrong, and I don't think we've got that here today. We'll look at that at some point. But it is, the team are saying they're fully behind him, that he's with them for the long haul, which manages his head quite well. Having said that, if he had another very difficult season, they couldn't afford to keep him. They need, if they had 2 Raikkonens in that Lotus last year, they could have won 1, if not 2, of the championships.
There is talk, and there is a rumour that his season is going to be reviewed every 5 races, that he'll sit down with the management and have a review, and they have got plenty of drivers on standby at that team and within that management stable, should they decide that it needs a replacement. I mean, look at someone like David Valsecchi, who for years in GP2 got experience and then finally won a championship.
Now in F1 he's made his mistakes and he's very fast. He looks like he's potentially faster than Kimi Raikkonen actually on a lap-by-lap basis. So frankly, I think they've made exactly the right decision to stick with him. But if I was the team, I would absolutely have him on a a shorter-term contract, so you can make the decisions you've got to make for the team.
Personally, I think he has matured and come on a lot since we first saw him in a Formula 1 car, and I think he is capable of some brilliant drives. But you take the brilliance with the learning experience. Romain Grosjean, currently fastest man on the circuits. Now, down to you, Ted. What have you discovered?
Yeah, I've got to say, Martin, that's a big call, saying that Grosjean is faster than Kimi on. Very difficult to get right, because you've got to actually get the switch from when it diverts air into blowing underneath the rear wing to actually stall the rear wing and dump the drag. You've got to get that switch clean, you've got to get it repeatable, and then you've got to get it pretty robust when you're not tripping the wing, i.e. that you've got to be sure the wing is giving you the rear downforce that the driver needs. That's why it's so difficult to get it done. And that's why we're seeing all the other teams that have it, Mercedes, Sauber, and Lotus themselves, and of course Red Bull, which we'll talk about a little later. Red Bull are trying their version of the drag reduction device for the first time today. We'll speak about that a little later in the programme. But just a sign of how tricky but it is to get it right. But he says that if you can get it right, then it offers some pretty impressive benefits on some certain circuits. We'll see if they do get it right and when they try to run it here at Lotus in a race.
Yeah, that fluidic switch that so the driver's not involved in the decision is key to it being legal, but as a driver at 150, 160 miles an hour to a corner, you need confidence, you need belief.
It is going to work.
Yeah.
Maybe Kimi needs to see one as well.
Yeah, as you're going through the gravel towards the barriers, the psychologist in your ear going, it'll stick.
But it's indicative once again. We talked about it so much last year. Here is a car, here is a team. The potential is all there, but we still wait to see it time and time again. But what about this team, Ferrari and Fernando Alonso, who spent a lot of today aero mapping. Felipe Massa did get a race simulation in yesterday, and Fernando Alonso taking over duty today, currently with the 9th fastest time. But that's not indicative of the Ferrari pace. They just haven't been chasing the times too much, as we found out when we caught up and Ted Kravitz spoke to Fernando Alonso just after lunch.
Hola, Fernando. It's a bit more like Banbury than Barcelona with the weather here. What have you been doing this morning, and what have you got planned for this afternoon?
I've been in the car, and I will be in the car in the afternoon again.
You got it doing a race distance to this afternoon?
We will try. We will try to do a race distance, but there are some parts that we need to keep going with the testing due to the weather conditions this morning and yesterday. It's difficult to test properly, so we will try to do both things. Try to test some parts and do as many miles as possible.
So do you think you'll only be able to try out the car and maybe Australia spec on the last 2 days of the test?
No, I think we'll be in Australia, because the parts for Australia are not coming for this test, some of them, so we will mount on Friday there, and hopefully they work.
And just finally, do you feel you're at the moment just behind the leaders a bit?
I think we are more or less where we expect to be, which is a little bit behind the top teams, because we finished Brazil.
He knows his ability, but he needs to raise this Ferrari outfit for this year. I mean, bearing in mind he hasn't won a title now in 7 years. He's itching to be successful, and he's itching for Ferrari to be successful.
Just stood and watched, just absorbed the pain of losing that World Championship. I don't think if the car's not on the pace again this year, I think he will be stamping his feet very much, and I think there'll be a lot of big changes, because there's no way Alonso will cope with losing another World Championship he feels he should have won.
Yeah, 3 points the difference, and a very intense stare and focus for Manis. We said last title won 2006, and I'm stunned that I'm saying that, because you expected after those back-to-back World Championships that more would swiftly follow, especially when he went to McLaren. But he missed the first test, arrives refreshed and focused, I think, and a realist as well, which is why I think he is such a positive team leader at Ferrari. He doesn't outwardly criticise, he just accepts the situation and says, no, we need to work on this, and we need to be doing better. But it's a fair assumption that he does need support within the team and from within his co-driver as well. If Ferrari have this hierarchy, the number one, the number two, he needs Felipe to step up to the plate for him, really.
Yeah, he needs Massa to take points off his rivals, and the team need Massa to step up to the plate when Alonso has an issue, either an incident on track or a reliability issue or what have you. Massa needs to be right in there, as he tended to be towards the end of last season, it must be said.
Oh, we shouldn't forget that I think Felipe had a very strong end to 2012. But it must be hard for any driver to accept that he is the number 2 and to be there playing the supporting role, even if he's signed an extension, he's on for another year, and he's gone into that new contract knowing the situation.
I think if you're in the end, it wrecked Ruben Barrichello, didn't it? He really suffered psychologically from that. I think Massa's managing it reasonably well. Mark Webber refuses to let it happen. Do you remember how hard Mark Webber was fighting Vettel in the final Grand Prix when Vettel was up for the championship? And Mark, despite as the Ferrari goes in way too deep into turn 1, we saw the lock-up and then couldn't quite make the apex. So Alonso there a little bit too brave on the brakes. But yeah, I think Mark Webber's absolutely right. I've had this conversation with him actually of you can't, psychologically, you cannot be openly painted as the number 2, even if that's where you end up on performance levels. And Massa psychologically has got to cope with that. I guess what's the alternative? I mean, Fisichella, one of the last Ferrari drivers, is GT racing, and so is Senna now, and so is probably Kamui Kobayashi, for example. Nothing wrong with GT racing, but that could be the alternative. You might be better off playing second fiddle to Alonso in a works Ferrari.
Ted, we'll bring you in on this discussion from down in the pit lane. I hope you can hear us.
Hello, David. Yes, of course I can hear you. Just 2 things from that interview. First of all, no surprise that Fernando Alonso says in his motivational way and downplaying expectations that we are behind the top teams. He's been singing from the same hymn sheet on that one pretty much all winter. Who those top teams are, we've been discussing throughout this, haven't we? So that's no surprise to hear him say that. What I was surprised to hear him say was that they wouldn't have the Melbourne, the first race upgrade package ready for the final 2 days of this test, which is unlike all their other championship challenging teams, unlike McLaren, unlike Red Bull, unlike Mercedes, we believe. So that is new to come out from Fernando Alonso. To be fair to him and to be fair to Ferrari, they had never said this, that they would, but they only sort of hinted at it. But disappointing, I think, both for us and perhaps for them and for everybody watching, that the first time they put all these upgrades on will be
bringing different upgrades from the final 2 days of testing to Melbourne. It's just that Ferrari don't seem to be having much that they're bringing in the interim on that one. A 1:32.5 for Fernando Alonso, by the way, on the first time lap of this run, which does intimate that he is heavy with fuel and starting a race simulation as the Williams gets rolled back. So many tweets coming in that I'm struggling to keep up with you all this afternoon, but Shannon Hollis, a woman after her own heart, 3,000-word essay she says I've got to do, but my love for Red Bull and McLaren is stronger than law. So that's strong. Becky Foote is sitting in the living room eating popcorn, which I like. Popcorn and sitting in my living room, both of those. And Blair Forbes wants to know, why don't they do testing in Abu Dhabi instead of Barcelona, which a lot of fans, Martin, are asking at the moment. Why are we here?
And so are some of the people in the teams. Of course, they started to go to Bahrain. They had a couple of sandy days there, but it's 6 or 7 hours flight, and it makes an awful lot more sense, frankly, but from a cost point of view. They decided they didn't want to do that anymore, but Abu Dhabi would work as well, as you say, and they would be getting more representative running. I think they can extrapolate what would happen to the car temperatures. It's just what's happening with the tyres as they're out of their range. But that Ferrari's definitely fat on fuel. He's struggling to get it slowed down into the apexes.
So he's going to be out on track for a while, and we'll be here until the end of testing to cover it. Friday afternoon at testing, but for Nico Hülkenberg, nothing relaxing a few moments ago, locking up at the end of the main straight and carrying just a little bit too much speed into the first corner. We're back live with the final test, hashtag SkyF1 for all your tweets, and a special mention to A-Rook GP, who is watching at home and says, as expected, my mum has just come home and told me a clean house is more important than F1. Can you tell her otherwise, please? That's not for me. Martin Brundle is the voice of that one.
You can clean the bits around the TV, can't you, maybe? But there's this evening. You can clean the house this evening.
Exactly. Well, yeah, but It will be repeated this evening. You'll be watching it again. That's the trouble. Top 3 times as they stand.
Yes, talking to his manager last year in Abu Dhabi, I think it was, he was saying, look, we see podiums with Sauber, they've scored podiums, we don't see podium potential, we see points with Force India. I'm sure they're trying to position him as well with the future in mind, either at Ferrari or somewhere like that. So in terms of Hulkenberg's opportunities, he's massively highly rated with people who matter in the paddock as Nico Hulkenberg. There's no doubt about that. And he's biding his time, and I'm pretty sure he'll end up in a front-running team sooner or later.
I do like the look of this Sauber. He's joined a team for whom the car, to me, looks impressive and has been impressive so far in winter testing. Hulkenberg coming in, looks like Max Chilton's getting ready to come out again in the Marussia. But those narrow side pods on the Sauber caused a lot of interest when that car was launched.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the colour scheme. I'm not, grey doesn't do it for me on a Formula 1 car.
It was the side pods. I'm going to get like side pods as Ted is with Gurney flats. I think.
I come at it from a different direction. I love watching Ted's stuff, but I come at it from a different direction in that I like to go out on track and listen first, because hearing the drivers stick their foot on the throttle and how early and how hard they've got the confidence to do that, and then look at the stopwatch, and then I go in the paddock. And one of the cornerstones, I should say, of Formula 1 is you have to design your own car. I actually think they should allow customer cars into Formula 1, but that's a topic for another day.
Someday, I think.
And the regulations are very tight. There's a lot of boxes where you can't put anything. That's what defines the overall look, if you like, and basic. Much more classic, doesn't it? Much more swooping, and the lines are, in many respects, I think if you drew an F1 car yourself freehand, without, you'd go for something more like that. There's not all sorts of ugly bits hanging up, but they're the expensive bits. The little tiny turning vanes and slot gaps and all sorts that give you the extra downforce that make you go 4 seconds a lap faster.
Well, Max Chilton starts his first time lap of this run. Down to you, Ted. Some Roman Grosjean news.
Yeah, but first, since we're on the topic of Marussia, and I should tell you something that Heikki Kovalainen has broken his silence on Twitter. Something very newspaperish about that phrase, isn't it? But he has been quite silent on Twitter recently, hasn't he? Which is normally that, just to put the record straight, he's still an IMG client. I don't know what stories were going around that he's broken up with his manager. And he hasn't signed anything with anybody. So doesn't mean that he's not talking to them, and doesn't mean that he's not driving for Marussia, perhaps potentially in this test. Doesn't mean that he is either. But anyway, I just thought I'd bring that to you. Check your Twitter, you'll see it. But just quickly on Roman Grosjean, looks like he's going through a little qualifying simulation now that we've got a dry track. Wasn't able to do it yesterday. Has just gone out on another brand new set of soft tyres. So you might want to keep across his progress on the old timing screens.
We certainly shall. Thank you very much indeed, Ted. The rumour is, Martin, that we might have to stand outside the Marussia garage at about 7 o'clock tonight and see who they're sneaking in through the back door. Because the rumours are that there's a seat fitting taking place, and the team racing driver has been brought to the track.
It smacks of a bit of trouble, doesn't it? But then I remember in 1994 I signed for McLaren on a Tuesday and was racing the following weekend in the Brazilian Grand Prix. They were waiting for Alain Prost. They wanted Prost to drive it, and he didn't want to in the end. So luckily I got the job. So it didn't do me a lot of good on that particular weekend. But even top teams sometimes are hanging out. But you've got to assume that they've paid Glock off, haven't they? They've had to pay Glock a lot of money to step away from his contract, on the basis they're going to get a lot more money from a Razier or something like that, and then if it doesn't rock up, they've got double trouble. So I'd imagine there's quite a lot of stress going on at the moment around that, not just who's going to drive it, but where are the funds?
Well, you've got to feel sorry for Lewis Razier, who thought he'd done the deal to bring himself into Formula 1 full-time. We don't know the situation as to why he hasn't appeared in the car. We can only speculate that the sponsorship money hasn't appeared as was expected by Marussia. But do you also feel a bit for Max Chilton? Or do you buy the line that he said today that actually this is helping him because he's getting a lot more mileage in the car?
Oh, absolutely. It's mileage his teammate, whoever it is not getting at all. and he's doubled his mileage, doubled his time on track. It's absolutely perfect for a rookie. So I don't, Max, I'm sure, would like Team Glock to be there so he could learn from him, and he had a target to aim at. And if he beat Glock on occasions, he would look very good on it. And that, if you're in a Marussia, that's your best chance of shining, isn't it? It's to beat an experienced teammate. But at least he's getting some track time. His neck will be strong, that's for sure.
Bit of rubber coming off the tyres there, bit of chunking. You saw that flying off the front tyres. Yeah, he'll be trimmed by the time he gets to Australia, that's for sure. I'm looking forward to watching him this season. He's a driver, Max Chilton, that has improved, hasn't he, year on year. He's not won titles, but he's certainly won races in his lower formula, and you can see that linear curve going upwards along now with his entry into Formula One, albeit, with the aid of a bit of money to the team as well.
Yeah, Max makes the point of people are paying to get Formula One drivers, but they've won races and serious races, as he did in GP2 before. They're not just plucked out of obscurity and stuck in these cars. They've proven themselves at international level. And I remember when I first got in Formula One, there were 13 Italian drivers, 13 of them, and that was because, let's put it, the tax regulations were amenable in Italy to lots of sponsorship coming out of that country. And
take it they're not so amenable now, then.
No, absolutely right. And it's all changed. So there's always been people somehow somebody's got to generate the funds for you to drive a Formula One car.
This man's not paying for his drive. He's earning money, I'm sure, for Red Bull by some of his drives. Sebastian Vettel, who we haven't seen out on track for a while, but Ted mentioned that he was coming out. What have we got on this run so far? On the medium compound tyre, started off with a 127.1. 126.7, 127.1, 127.7. Fairly consistent in what is just a 4-timed lap run for Sebastian Vettel.
I tell you, it looks very frustrating driving a Formula One car out at the moment. They've got no grip, they're all over the place. Turn in, turn back out. Really struggling with the cars.
Now there's the screens waiting for his arrival. We don't get to see an awful lot of that car as it stood still in the pit lane. Not just the lack of grip, Martin, I think the wind is ever so fierce out there as well. And you've got a big tailwind going down the main straight, so that when you turn into turn one, that's giving you a mighty crosswind there as well. And it's not great conditions, is it?
No, what you've got to do in those circumstances, I mean, it's a circle in the end that you're doing, so there'll be parts of the racetrack where you've got a headwind, and it means you can brake it a little bit later, you go on downforce, and you're going a little bit slower when you arrive. So you have to then take the time that's on the table into a headwind and then yield a little bit in a tailwind or a crosswind.
It seems to me, Martin, that the only car out there that is doing a proper race simulation this afternoon is this one. It's Fernando Alonso, who started out with a 132.5 and now down up to a 132.8. Down to you, Ted.
Yeah, well, that's what he said they were going to try to do, wasn't it? Just going to show you some pictures of the Red Bull rear wing stalling device. There it is. Can you see? This is a fascinating shot because it shows all the aero paint on it, and aerodynamicists in all the other teams will be glued to with their 3D glasses on, potentially glued to their tellies, trying to magnify some of the traces of aero paint here, because they've got, just if you can look under between where it says Q and 1 on that logo on the back, you can see the little stay, the little upright, which delivers air into the bottom of the rear wing main plane. So Red Bull actually choosing a different area to blow the rear wing than Lotus, Mercedes and Sauber. Talking of Sauber, they've got this new D-shaped barge board on the outer side of the side pod, something that McLaren actually started last season, but they've since changed it. But now Sauber are giving that a go, just on the outer edge of the side pods, you can see there. On Ferrari, Fernando Alonso just told us there weren't going to be many upgrades. There is a new brake duct. If you can just look next to the rear wheel there, you can see it's very elaborate, nicely sort of shaped, curved brake duct with a little winglet on top of it. Nice bit there on the Ferrari. And finally on the Force India, just noticed a little, just underneath the front suspension wishbones there, they just put a slot in the little scoop barge boards. So just a couple of upgrades on the Force India as they head towards the end of this test. So interesting stuff, and we'll have more on the regular development corner section of the Notebook on this channel on Saturday or Sunday. But this is Red Bull delivering some new parts for their Melbourne upgrade. We just had these shots in about half an hour ago, straight in from Milton Keynes, and I believe they also had delivered chassis 2, or rather their second chassis. There it is, you can see it about to be wheeled out of that low loader, and they'll be wanting to shake that down with all the Melbourne goodies on it tomorrow and the final day of this test.
See, that would have passed, or you would have passed that on the way down to Barcelona, Martin, for Milton Keynes, and you wouldn't even have known there was a Red Bull chassis on the back.
Presumably they sleep with it or something when they have to stay overnight.
So Fernando Alonso coming in, and I assume this will be for a quick pit stop and then back out again. Yes, it is. So swapping hard compound tyres for hard compound tyres, and Fernando Alonso has completed 13 laps in that opening stint of his race simulation. Carries on his way once again, and he joins Nico Rosberg and Daniel Ricciardo as the only 3 cars on the track. Welcome back to our testing coverage here in Barcelona. Pastor Maldonado out on track on the day that the education system in Britain has ground to a halt. Judging by the amount of tweets we've been getting from those of you saying you've stopped your dissertation, you're not doing your homework, and you've skipped lectures just to listen to myself and Martin Brundle and watch the Formula 1 cars. And hello to Kirsty Harding, who says, I've managed to get the pub landlords to put F1 on. And now he's watching Sky F1. I think we've got a new fan of the sport. So well done to you, Kirsty. Keep it on for the whole season as we welcome Bob Fernley, CEO at the Force India team, into our commentary box alongside Martin and myself. Hello, Bob.
Hello, Crofty.
How are you, dear boy?
We're very good, actually.
We wanted to welcome you whilst your driver was out on track, but sadly, Adrian Sutil isn't out there. What's going on?
No, we probably finished. No, genuinely, we finished the programme. We had a limited mileage programme today anyway because of gearbox and engine side of it. And with the weather the way it was, we just wanted to get all of the tests in and ready for tomorrow for the long runs and the race simulations.
Now, Adrian said, I deserve a second chance after his problems, and clearly you think he does too.
Absolutely we do. I think last week Adrian came into the test for us here, which was exemplary. I mean, he just ticked every box, and that's not actually any disrespect meant to Jules, because it was a very, very hard and close decision for the two of them, and we just feel that perhaps Adrian has that tiny little bit more experience to deliver what we need to do this year, but it was a very, very difficult decision.
But Adrian is still the same driver that you decided as a team just over a year ago wasn't good enough for you.
Correct, excepting that I think that if you saw the way that Adrian has carried himself since the test last week, I think he's learned a lot by being out for a year. And you're quite right. I mean, Adrian's always been very fast, and you know, we had to make a choice in 2012 whether we ran Nico or Adrian, and it was Nico. And there's no question on that. But I think that Adrian deserves a second chance, and that's what
the incident in China, that he would struggle to go back to China or get a visa to go to America and do those Grand Prix. He couldn't do all the Grand Prix. Well, what's the situation on that?
I don't think there's any problems there. I think it's just a matter of the management team clearing it all beforehand. But we don't expect any problems at all.
Is that something, though, that you looked into before you made the signing and before the contracts were completed? Because, you know, he's got to go to China in the near future, and he's got to go to America as well. And America especially is a country where it can be difficult to get a working visa if you have a conviction.
Correct. But, you know, as you know, even with a normal visa going in, where you apply, for instance, going in on a corporate jet, it's exactly the same visa.
Tyres, has he? And his neck and all that sort of thing?
No, I mean, it's as if he's never been away. Last week, he just sort of jumped into the car, was within 20 laps he was up to speed, and very relaxed, and not finding anything difficult. I think the tyres actually suit him.
that picture there. I was a bit sceptical about this 3D, I've got to be honest, but it was awesome if you rub it in, if you've not got it at home. But I have to say, look at that, with the Sauber coming there.
Yeah, very nicely pictured Nico there, isn't it? Does that remind me?
Yes.
We're just trying to rub it in. This is your driver last year. This is the one that slipped through your fingers a bit, Bob, I'm afraid. Seriously, my mate Toby Foster's just texted me to say, I've just decided to buy a 3D telly, all on the strength of what we're doing this afternoon. You know, we should be on a profit share and that sort of thing. I can't get used to the sight of Bob Fernie in 3D glasses. Has to be said. But I wonder, your driver lineup this year, was the signing of Adrian also a way to benchmark the progress of Paul over the last 2 years as well, given that when they were teammates before, it was a 60-40 split in terms of the points scored? And
you've got to get it done, haven't you?
Yeah, I think the difference between this year perhaps and the last 2 years is I'm hoping that when we hit Melbourne, the car is actually performing at optimum, whereas in both 2011 and 12 we were actually behind the black ball a little bit, and we didn't really get going until after Barcelona, and in fact in most cases till Canada.
You had consistency last year though. It just didn't deliver maybe as much as you wanted to with that consistency. Is the aim that you should be getting 2 cars into Q3 pretty much every race?
Yeah, I think we'd hoped to be able to finish off, or start I should say, where we finished off, and we finished every race, the last 9 races of last year in the points, and we need to have 2 cars in the points. And more importantly, when those podium opportunities come along, as they did last year, we've got to convert them, and that's going to be the difference this year.
It doesn't seem to bother Kimi being away 3 years, but are you concerned about Sutil's racecraft or qualifying, under pressure in a Q3 shootout?
I'm not too worried about his qualifying, but I think you're quite right to point out that there could be an issue in race. I mean, we had that with Nico last year. Into it again.
So down to turn 1 at the start of the race and all of those instinctive things.
How hard is it for the team financially at the moment, Bob? Being a mid-table team with aspirations to close the gap to the Lotus, to the Mercedes of this world, not being like Mercedes, a works team. Financially, how hard is it to put together a budget that you need?
The operating budget for us has never been a problem, really, Crofty. The difficulty for us is our asset base. We've got wind tunnels that are 20 years old, and we need to look at replacing those. And then we've got positions where the regulations may change and wind tunnel usage may change. And of course, we've got shareholders that have got to invest a lot of money if we're going to make those things do. And we've actually started that process. But if all of a sudden it changes in 2014 and we have wind tunnel restrictions, where do we go?
We got that 50 million last year. Was that from Sahara, wasn't it? Was that a cash injection of like, here's the check, go out and spend it, or is that drip fed over 2 or 3 years?
No, it's not Sahara. I mean, it's both BJ and Sahara. It's the shareholders themselves, but they support what we need to go through. I mean, we've ordered certain long-term items, but if you're moving into a wind tunnel program, for instance, a rolling your road is a 2-year lead time.
Is there any truth in that story that if you'd have taken Bianchi, it would have been subject to also getting a very special price on Ferrari engines, going to Ferrari engines?
I think that when we're doing the negotiations for 2014, which I think everybody's going through at the moment, we're trying to get the best technical and commercial package. And for sure, Ferrari were very supportive and very helpful in working with us with Jules. But at the end of the day, we've got to make decisions that we feel are the best for the team and the shareholders.
When do you need to make that decision on the 2014 engine? Or has it already been made, and can we speculate that with Adrian in the car, you're going to keep the Mercedes?
No, I don't think you can do that. I think everybody's going through the same process at the moment. The engine manufacturers are not ready yet to do their programs. There's a huge amount of work in it, as you know, and putting contracts together, I suspect for most teams, is a few months away.
Fast forwarding to next year at this time, at this test, do you think it's going to be all about engines and dramas and reliability? And are you fearful for Formula One next year at this time?
I'm not fearful for it. In some ways, I'm quite excited about it, actually, because for the first time in many years, we're going to have engines as a differentiator, and there's no question of that. There will be reliability problems.
The fans will be going, no, I don't want that.
But until you've had a few years to settle it all down, that's what's going to happen. You've got to accept that.
That's why I'm fearful of it.
Yeah, see, but what I don't understand as well is that I know we're just about to go into the 2013 season, but the teams will be looking at 2014 quite closely already. If you don't know what engine and gearbox and, I keep calling him engine, power units package that you're going to be using, how can you possibly start to put a design in process for a car until you know the supplier that's going to be giving you the power?
Well, the answer is you can't. I mean, you can do some work on it, but you can't get the cooling and all of the fit out of radiators and everything else in there until you know what power unit you're going to put in.
So that puts you at a huge disadvantage. It puts teams that are looking, Marussia have said they're probably going to need a new engine supplier as well, at a huge disadvantage.
Well, I would imagine that it puts pretty well everybody at a disadvantage except the manufacturing teams who know full well that they're going to have those units.
What's your position on customer cars? Would you like to have a pair of McLarens to run, for example? I mean, Cyril Abitbul at Caterham was very anti it, which surprised me a little bit, but what's your view?
I thought Cyril was actually for the customer car or a version of it, but no, we would not be for it. I think it takes away what we're trying to achieve in Formula 1. I mean, we are constructors at the end of the day, and that's the DNA of Formula 1. It makes the difference to what we do. And if you started to bring in 2 McLarens and 2 Ferraris and 2 Red Bulls in addition to the works teams, then the potential of constructing...
You know, Caterham and Marussia to spend 50-60 million pounds and still be 3-4 seconds off the pace because they just don't have the resource to, you know, why not buy a car that you can go and be pretty competitive in?
Yeah, I understand that, Martin, but, you know, with all due respect, Force India 5 years ago was where they were.
Yeah, fair comment.
Bob, it's been great having you in the commentary box. I wish you could stay a bit longer, but you've probably got to go back and fit a new gearbox in the back of your car or something like that. Tomorrow, can you stay out on track just a little bit longer for all the fans? One more question just before you go, and this came in from one of our viewers this afternoon, from the real Batman. Now that Jules Bianchi is looking for a drive for this season, what do you do? Is it too late for him to get a drive in another series? Does he stay with you as reserve driver? What is his future?
I mean, we'd love to be able to still work with Jules, but that's a decision for him and his management team at the end of the day. And you know, I wouldn't say that all avenues are closed off yet for him.
We shall see what happens in the future. Bob Fernie from Force India, thank you very much. You're more than welcome to stay and watch the 3D coverage because you've still got your glasses on. Jenson Button going around the track at the moment, second fastest time of the day, 1:23.1. We caught up with Jenson Button at the start of this week for a feature that you can see as part of our Australian Grand Prix coverage on Sky Sports F1 HD. And Jenson reminded us just how important this week was for him and the team.
I definitely need the next 2 days to feel ready for Melbourne. We've tried a lot of new things with the car, and I think we've got a lot of very useful information, but we haven't really done any setup work to try and improve the car. So hopefully the next 2 days are busy days, over 100 laps each day, so that we can get the car ready and get myself ready really in the car for Melbourne. But I think the car itself, the basic car is very strong. It's just been a little bit complicated in certain ways, but we feel that we're there now. We understand it a lot more. We just need to go out there for 2 more days and get a good feel for it.
So is Jenson Button getting a good feel for his McLaren out there? Sadly for us, he's out there on unmarked tyres, so it's a little bit tricky to tell what he's on at the moment. But his current run, if I can get the times up in front of me.
29s and 30s.
Yeah, so would indicate what medium compound, do you think?
Well,
We don't know the fuel, do we?
I'd just be guessing, and I don't like guessing, so we'll have to wait and see. But, I mean, they're reasonably consistent, which suggests a more durable compound. But it's, you know, he's not got a lot of degradation there. He's definitely at least pumping consistent lap times in. And when Alonso was doing longer runs, he was doing, I think, very similar times, sort of mid 29s.
At least he's giving us some on-track action, and he'll give us a reaction as well at the top of the F1 show in about an hour's time on Sky Sports F1 HD. We'll have Jenson Button live with us. Welcome back to Barcelona, wherever and however you are watching us this afternoon. Don't forget, when the testing finishes, the F1 chat continues. The F1 show with Natalie Pinkham in London and Ted Kravitz here in Barcelona on your screens at 4:30 with more testing news. Jenson Button joining us and some highlights from the glitz and the glamour that was the Motorsport Hall of Fame on Monday, which both Martin Brundle and myself were at, and a thoroughly enjoyable evening it was too.
Indeed. Seeing some greats there.
Jenson Button not in the Hall of Fame yet. Maybe one day for the McLaren driver, who's been out on the track for a few laps and now in for a pit stop, whilst Fernando Alonso has his pit stop and goes out for what is now the third stint of his race simulation this afternoon. Alonso along with Sebastian Vettel and Nico Rosberg and Nico Hülkenberg out on the track at the moment. Down to you, Ted.
Yeah, did you see he put inters on?
He has. Is it raining?
It is. Very good reason he put inters on, because it is raining, yes. We've had the best of the day, unfortunately, and I've enjoyed it while it lasted, not being rained on.
When was that, Ted? Because we seem to have missed that as well.
Sorry, say again, David.
At the best of the day, when was that? It's been sub-zero since about 9 o'clock this morning.
Well, it didn't rain, and that's a blessing for somebody like me who hasn't actually brought a water-resistant coat to wear. So yeah, foolish choice by me. So yeah, it's fairly steady here in the pit lane. It looks like the weather, as always, this week is coming in from the direction of the last corner, and there do look like some heavy clouds up there. I don't know what you've seen else from the from on track, David, but McLaren have also just made a practice pit stop and wheeled Jenson Button back into the garage. Actually, Mark Priestley, who joined us on the commentary, is down here in the pit lane with me. They didn't. It looks like, Mark, your latter-day mechanics here, colleagues at McLaren, weren't going for a quick time, but they'll want to do some more pit stop practice sometime towards the end of this test, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've got, speaking to the guys, they have got a pit stop practice planned for later on today, perhaps after the running's finished. But, you know, these guys, there are a couple of guys in new positions. They've got some new, we're standing here looking at the pit stop equipment that they've got laid out. It's a new system for this year, so all of that stuff needs bedding in. It is trying out. It's all going to be ever so slightly different for the guys that are using it. And, of course, it's the perfect opportunity for them to try that today.
It's a new system as well on their heads, because if you noticed, gone are the Stormtrooper type helmets that I remember you used to wear. They've been around for ages. Now they've got these sort of high resolution yellow goggles, if you want them, helmets. We've actually featured them on this testing reports before this week, as Max Chilton passes me on the...
You need to see the car coming in. You need to know what's going on around you. You need very good, awareness of what's going on around you. And if you've got a set of goggles on, a set of ski goggles is what we used to wear years ago, quite often your peripheral vision is very limited with those. So they do have an actual purpose, as well as perhaps looking fairly stylish in the pit lane too.
And is it the mechanic's choice whether they wear the yellow visor or the dark one, depending on what their eyes are best suited?
Yeah, I think so, and much as the driver would use on track, different conditions. We're very much overcast here. It's not a very bright day at all, and those sort of things do make a slight difference to what you see through it. So yeah, they'll have the choice on that.
Okay, just finally, because we've got to go back up to the commentary box. Mechanicking's a bit of a young man's game. That's why you've moved on to greater things now, involved in team management and lower formulas, of course. But I've noticed Steve Cook, old Tats, if people might recognise him, still around in the back of the McLaren garage. I haven't seen Forklift yet, one of your old colleagues as well. The mechanics still live long and work long hours at McLaren.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much for making me feel very old for that there, Ted. But yeah, it's a young man's game. Things have changed a little bit since I was in the pit lane back in 2009, but the guys here, particularly at a test, much the same with every team, they have a night shift. So the guys we see here in the pit lane will get to the end of the day's running today, they'll do a handover period of perhaps a couple of hours to the other car crew of guys, who will then take the car through the evening and beyond, way into the small hours. Everybody's gone home and the cameras have gone away. There's very much a lot of activity still going on all night long in the garages here at the pit lane.
Interesting stuff. Okay, Mark, thank you very much. Crofty, back to you.
Yes, all-nighters at a test, very common. The only thing different in 2013 is that there are two shifts. Years ago, it used to be just one shift of mechanics, all of whom have had nicknames. I think every single mechanic in the pit lane must have a nickname, so thanks to Elvis and Ted for that one there, to give Mark his his full title. Out on track, Fernando Alonso on the intermediate tyres, because it is splitting the rain. He's got the whole track to himself, Martin. It's like a Ferrari lone test out there.
Lovely feeling.
But I don't know if they're just thinking, well, we might as well finish the run because that's the one we've started. I'm not quite sure how much they're going to be learning in these sort of conditions.
Yeah, well, they haven't. I don't think they started the test early enough to get a complete race distance in anyway. So they're obviously they're wanting to keep running, and they're running something down, whether it's to a reliability thing, a temperature thing, or they'll go and hopefully, presumably they've done all their fuel pickup tests by this stage of the proceedings, and we really are getting some rain down there now, aren't we?
Aren't we just? Rachel Simpson has tweeted us with the hashtag SkyF1. Very alert wherever you're watching this afternoon, and says an interesting comment from Bob Fernley right at the end of his interview with Martin and myself. Not all avenues are closed off for Jules Bianchi this year. And I have to say, Rachel, both Martin and myself during the break both said to ourselves, interesting comment, wasn't it?
It was, and I think Bob thinks that I sort of quietly had a word with him about it, and I think he thinks it's not out of the question that Bianchi and his management, Nicholas Top, might well be talking to Marussia if the Razia deal falls over, if the money's not around, because especially if they can take Ferrari engines there, that you can put 2 and 2 together and make 6 actually quite easily. Yeah. But it was an interesting comment, and it does open up the idea of Bianchi now goes to Marussia instead.
It's a logical fit, isn't it, for a team needing an engine supplier? But is it logical to say that if Jules Bianchi goes anywhere, that there is a Ferrari engine deal for the future that follows it? Just because, well, he's Ferrari's development driver, and his manager is Jean Todt's son, who of course used to be the team principal. Yeah,
and Ferrari are saying they want some engines out there. They need that with the Toro Rosso going to Renault. They know that there's going to be a huge development phase of the 2014 engines, and for the first year, maybe 2 years, and you need as many teams out there as you can collecting data. So, I think it's a bit like playing Monopoly for them at the moment, the engine manufacturers. They're collecting up properties.
Ted Kravitz, someone suggested to me earlier that where Luis Razia is concerned, we should start Formula One's version of Where's Wally, but maybe we should just start Where's Bianchi instead.
Where's Bianchi, where's Heikki, where's Narain as well, that's another name.
Well,
where's Bruno?
Falling, that's why Fernando Alonso's got intermediate side.
Very good. Where's Kamui? We might as well throw all the out-of-work F1 drivers into there. Jules Bianchi, I'm told, I haven't seen him personally, but I'm told that he is here today in his Ferrari gear, not in his Force India gear, in his Ferrari gear. So just keeping across what's going on with Fernando Alonso. So maybe we're expecting to see a Finn with blonde hair, and in fact, the guy who potentially might take that Marussia seat is already at the circuit. Anyway, time will tell. It's all part of the intrigue, isn't it? Just tell you that down at Williams, Pastor Maldonado has gone out now on the intermediate tyres, and the man who should have been driving, or was slated to drive today, Valtteri Bottas, is standing right in front of me in the garage. And actually, it's a good move from Williams, because what they've done, they know that the rain was going to be here today. So rather than burden Valtteri with the 2 wet days, they've managed to persuade Pastor to give one of his, what we imagine is going to be dry tomorrow, back to Valtteri tomorrow. So, sorry, I haven't explained that very well. Maldonado was going to do the last 2 days in the dry, as we think the weather's going to be. But they've said now that actually Bottas can drive one of the last 2 days in the dry weather. So now the only team that isn't doing that is Lotus, where Grosjean will give up the car now. Kimi Räikkönen will have what we think will be the nice 2 dry, warm days for the last 2 days of the test.
Croft, you're buying the first round of beers tonight after that Narain. The Narain is falling joke. That was shocking. In fact, you're buying the first 2 rounds of beers after that.
Well, it's pre-season testing for the teams and my joke book. I'll get some better material by Australia, I promise.
It won't be difficult.
It might not have been good, but it was quick.
It was off the mark.
which is the story of my career, quite frankly. Fernando Alonso out on track. The Williams guys, it's quite interesting that a lot of drivers, if they're not driving, Sergio Perez for instance, if they're not driving, they're not here. But the Williams guys are expected to stay in the garage at testing, both Bottas and Maldonado, which I think is for younger, more inexperienced drivers, of which Sergio Perez is one, is not a bad idea.
Well, I think it's essentially picking up little nuances and your understanding the process, and two heads are better than one, very much so in that situation.
So, Alonso out on track, Nico Rosberg, Maldonado and Daniel Ricciardo too. We'll be back in a few minutes. And as you see the Williams with all four wheels revolving, you see Guido van der Garde stopping his Caterham on the inside of turn 4, and that has brought out another red flag for today with 17 minutes to go this session. When a car stops by the track in testing, the red flag comes out so it can be recovered.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, especially if you're into a stint like just fastened the F1 car through there, didn't it? Yeah. The Nissan there. Especially if you're in a stint, a long run like the Ferrari is, it interrupts it very badly, and you lose data in many respects. But what else can you do? You know, they're not going to have all the cranes here and that sort of thing, the full facilities that you get at an F1 race, and the quick recovery vehicles, the snatch and all that sort of thing. They've got to bring a low loader out and take it away. Here comes that Nissan. I hope he can slow down when he gets there.
Yeah, slows down to give Guido van der Garde a lift back.
Ooh, comes one the other direction. Now that is nerve-wracking.
Just a bit. I'm trying to think, was anyone else on track? No, might have been...
Something's still out there.
Sebastian Vettel might actually have been on track somewhere.
He's at the end of the lap. He's
Yeah,
just coming in the pit lane.
He's coming to the end of his lap, but yeah, don't often have cars going the opposite direction.
Not while the track's live, no.
In fact, yeah, look, there is Sebastian Vettel just coming in now in his Red Bull, but I would imagine he was pretty clear of the cars going the opposite direction. And he just has a little practice start for good measure as he comes in. Tyres don't look particularly tuned, and neither should they, because he'd only been out there for 4 laps. Fernando Alonso was the man doing his race simulation. Started at lap 64. He's only done about 37 laps for that, so not as much as they would have wanted.
The Red Bull, they're very keen to not let you see the back of that, and of course, and that's a well-rehearsed procedure they got there, isn't it? But also, there's no doubt about it, the Red Bull runs a lot of rake. It's low at the front, high at the back. It's a flying wing, which is theoretically very good, but you've got to be able to have a very benign aerodynamics and stop the floor from stalling at low speeds when the air downforce is off and the compression of the torsion bars is off, and the back end, the ride height goes up. You can see it very much if you on certain camera shots towards the end of the straight when they're doing thick end of a couple of 100 miles an hour, the air's pushing them down and they're touching the ground. In the slow corners, they're much higher in ride height, and it's really complex to get a car to work like that. And once again, it seems as if Red Bull have managed to achieve that.
Tied in with the discovery of the double DRS round about Singapore time last year, where we saw that rake return. We kind of missed it on the Red Bull for the first half of the season.
Yeah, well, I think when they had to stiffen up the front wings, that made a big difference for them, didn't it? And then that tongue that sticks out underneath the floor, under where the driver's legs are, effectively, that shadow plate tongue, plays a key role in that as well, and they've all been stiffened up. But it does look as if Adrian Newey and his team have managed to get a car that works with a lot of rake again.
Talking of stiffer front wings and stronger front wings, one of the big, I suppose, regulation changes going from 2012 to 2013 is the fact that the FIA have revised their load test for the front wings. They were subjected will be subjected to 1,000 Newton force, which is about 102 kilograms, I think, something like that. But they've actually moved where they're testing as well, and we saw yesterday Red Bull running sensors along their front wing with the red dots on the end plates as they try and work out if they can pass that test, which Adrian Newey says is difficult, and yet still do what they want with the front wing as well.
Yeah, it was an interesting comment from Christian Horner. I was reading in an interview with him in a magazine. He said, well, we challenge the regulations because they're there to be challenged. That's what you do. You read them once, see what they say, and you read them the second time, see how you can get around them, basically.
Exactly what you should do.
Yeah, and that's how it's always been.
And that's how Renault have been been in conversation with the FIA and Charlie Whiting recently about their engine mapping. Try and put it simply, the rule was that you couldn't deviate by more than 2% from your engine maps at the start of last season, when the FIA brought that clarification in last year, and Renault teams, Renault as an engine manufacturer, decided that, well, we can reset that for the start of this year and have some new maps, but that won't be happening.
No, when you read some of that stuff, it seems very fundamental, almost as if we're having a bit of a laugh, but clear, you know, when it's explained to you, a lot of the aspects all around it, it's inevitably it becomes much more complex than it first seems.
Plenty of time to talk new regulation changes in the last couple of days of testing. Not getting any action on the track at the moment as that Caterham is put onto the low loader. So let's talk tyres. Paul Hembry was up with us in the commentary box, and Ted Kravitz has found him in the pit lane this afternoon.
Hello, David. Yes, actually, we're in the paddock, if truth be told, outside the Pirelli motorhome, with wonderful images from the calendar pasted on the back walls. People don't know that listening at home. I see why you left the pit lane, Ted. I'm not looking at them, David. I'm looking at Paul.
We're a very popular motorhome.
You are indeed. OK, so before the rain came, what interesting things have we seen tyre-wise for teams doing?
Well, again, I mean, it sounds boring to repeat it, but it's still very, very cold, and the tyres aren't really in their working range. This morning, what was it, 7 or 8 degrees? I think we got up to a balmy 12 or 13 this afternoon. So still temperatures that we're not going to see during the season. So the tyres will still be graining and consuming and degrading much more than you'll see in their normal utilisation.
OK, and is there further understanding that they can do on the intermediate and wet now for the rest of the session? Or really, to this end, at this point, everybody knows how long they're going to last, and indeed, because of the different track temperatures, that's another random factor.
Yeah, I mean, well, the positive has been we've done a lot of extensive running on the wets and intermediates, so they know that the wet tyres in particular, the rear tyre, has improved its handling this year, and the drivers have appreciated that it's not as snappy as they say. It doesn't give away quite as rapidly as it did last year. Wear levels are low on a full wet tyre. To be honest, when it's full rain, you can go forever on them. And the intermediate does its 20 laps as per prediction. So from that point of view, it's been positive, because you don't often get a chance to actually do wet testing. You're often already in a race environment, and if you're in free practice, of course, teams don't want to risk having an off or doing something silly, because it might jeopardise what they're going to do in the race. So it's been, I think, for the teams quite useful to do the wet running.
OK, and last one for me, David, or Martin, if you want to come in with a question. What are you expecting from Melbourne? You've gone there with an adventurous tyre selection. We haven't seen too much running on the super soft here. Do you think that's going to be a real fly in the ointment for everybody? It's going to be a real random factor for everyone?
I think it'll be different. What we've seen in the last couple of years is actually Melbourne's been pretty low in terms of wear and abrasion, which, if you go back to 2011, we were similarly in cold conditions, and everyone was thinking again 5 or 6 pit stops, and Perez did 1. I think that's going to be pretty much the case, that you're going to see a race on 2, maybe 3 stops. The super soft used primarily for qualifying. So yeah, it's a bit different, but I think this year it's a good year to do that.
Paul, Martin here, take us through these unmarked tyres that we saw Jenson Button on recently, for example. What's that all about?
Oh, they're secret, special. No, we've created a backup factory in Romania for the Formula 1 production. I mean, the normal tyres we use throughout the season are made in Izmit in Turkey, but to be a good company, after we did our analysis, and we felt that we needed a backup in case of earthquake, natural disaster and things like that, so we built up a second factory, and it's just a verification of that product. So it's this year's tyre, but produced in a different production location.
And which compound, though, are the unmarked ones? Are they variable?
Medium.
Medium compound.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That was a lucky guess from me earlier then, wasn't it?
You got it. No, Crofty, we just gave you orange. Don't start inventing new things for us.
Oh, yes. No, I'm forever in your debt for that one. Paul, just finally, spitting with rain, current temperature 10.8 degrees allegedly. What temperature are you looking for tomorrow to get some realistic data from your tyres?
I don't think we're going to see it this weekend, I have to be really honest with you. I mean, even when we start talking about track temperatures maybe hitting 15 or even 20, the reality is you've still got very cold air. The underlying ground temperature is still very, very cold. So you're still going to be far off what you're going to see when you come to Barcelona in May. Maybe we'll get a little bit closer to utilisation of the medium tyre, but the soft and the hard, I think, will still be going to be somewhere away.
Thanks ever so much, Paul. Speak to you again tomorrow.
Look forward to it, Crofty.
Take care of yourself. One of our viewers this afternoon, and I will find your name because there's so many tweets coming through just asking what is wrong with Portimao, which is a lovely track, it has to be said, down in Portugal. Surely it will be a little bit warmer down there to go testing than Barcelona.
It's too bumpy now. You see GT cars going around there. My son was in an F2 car around there a year or so ago. It's incredibly bumpy. The surface hasn't stood up too well down there. So I think that's one of the issues. But I think the other thing is that it's not an F1 circuit. At least they're going around a circuit here that will hold an F1 race. You could say, well, nor does Jerez.
So cars coming out for the final 7 minutes. I think it might just have stopped spitting with rain, but it's still damp enough for the intermediate tyres. Can't be many of those left. I know you get 35 sets per car maximum per test. I'm not quite sure, should have asked Paul really, how many intermediates you get as part of that, but for the last couple of days they've taken a fair amount of punishment, the intermediate tyres.
I think it would work from sort of halfway through the slick range to halfway through the wet range. It really was a true intermediate tyre that would cover just about all circumstances that weren't clearly very wet or bone dry. With the Pirelli tyres, it doesn't seem to be like that. They're very much more compartmentalised in terms of there's even a small gap really between when the slick will work and when the intermediate is optimised. So I think they need to get out there and understand the tyres better.
We've obviously got plenty of sets down at Toro Rosso because they just switched a set of intermediates for another new one on Daniel Ricciardo's car. Ricciardo, by the way, sporting a black crash helmet for this test and shades of James Hunt. Or he's got a spec for Australia that he's keeping secret, I don't know.
Actually testing helmets if you've got some turbulence inside the car and you get lift, often you get lift. So whether they've just got a carbon lid that they're trying to see that hasn't been painted up, it's unusual if they have.
Just seen down the straight, you can see it here, Fernando Alonso will be catching up Max Chilton, who was doing, I think, a controlled aero test, almost like a straight line test, down that main straight. As now everybody seems to be coming back out again.
You see that? You just caught a glimpse there of somebody waving, I think it was a Ferrari flag. And as a driver, you just tuned into flag.
As a Formula One driver, wasn't it? Grey, cold, damp day in Barcelona. It's why you wanted to go into the sport in the first place.
Well, it's nice though. You've got the day ahead of you, especially if you're into a tyre programme or something, and you really could pump some laps in.
Why would McLaren send Button out on a set of wet tyres, I wonder?
Unless he's aero mapping down the straight, just getting it to 200 kilometres an hour and just aero mapping, or unless this plane got it wrong.
And they're getting some very good pit stop practice in, some quick pit stop practice down at Toro Rosso, which I think is very much a deliberate strategy of, right, let's simulate some race conditions here. And they've had 2 in the last 3 laps for Daniel Ricciardo, as they're all kind of going out, coming in for a change of tyres, a little bit of aero mapping, then back out again, slick tyres for Fernando Alonso.
It's important to do. There'll be slight differences in wheel nuts, wheel guns, spindles, front jacks that don't work, like that one.
Yep.
Williams, of course, have got that front axle, haven't they, that's got a very specific sort of flow of air through it that could well interfere with their pit stop procedures, and that must be the end of the session then, presumably.
Yeah, well, there is the Williams, isn't it? And behind that fire truck is Pastor Maldonado's Williams. And I wonder what's happened down there. Because there's an awful lot of liquid down there, Martin, on the tarmac. Maldonado stood by the side of his car. I think that will be the end of the session. The red flag is out again, and we're at less than 3 minutes to go. I wonder if Pastor Maldonado's had a bit of a moment down there.
I think that's surely, isn't that not just the damp from earlier on, that's not cleared up from the rain? Maybe there's one of those painted advertising things there or something. But Maldonado's car then, the Williams, the man who won the Grand Prix here last year, of course, with a brilliant performance for Williams, just before their garage caught fire, scarily.
Yeah, what a weekend that was for the Williams team. Now, is this Toro Rosso boys practicing how long it takes them to push the car down the pit lane? Should they need to at some stage, or has he just overshot his garage?
I think he was obviously heading out, wasn't he, when the flag, there's a checkered flag out, so they've waved the red and the checkered, and it's game over, so they have to go and fish their man back in again.
Yeah, end of session, end of day. And see, Daniel Ricciardo's got he's changed crash helmets as well. He was definitely sporting the black crash helmet earlier today, because I noticed it at the side of our commentary box, and I think when he came out for those little runs at the end, he'd changed into his regular helmet.
Take your word for that, young man. I did not see it.
Honestly, it's true, Gov. And I'll go and ask him about it, just so I know I'm not going mad at the end tonight. So many things we've got to do at the end of this session, and Ted's notebook coming up as well. He'll be working long into the night, so let's just have a look at this afternoon. Fernando Alonso, in the end, 102 laps in the day for Fernando Alonso, so a decent amount of kilometres for him. 120 laps, though, for Nico Rosberg. Once again, Mercedes got the most mileage in, as they did yesterday with Lewis Hamilton. But this, as the screens go on the Toro Rosso garage, is the story of the day on day 2 of testing here in Barcelona. And after overnight storms, it was a damp track once again as Fernando Alonso came out. Plenty of fans queuing up to get into the circuit to see Alonso's reappearance at testing, and he got a good view of those cheering him and waving at him around the track, as did Jenson Button. Really no meaningful running at all in the first half an hour of the day. Switch from wets to intermediates. Turn 5 has proved a little bit tricky throughout this weekend. Nico Rosberg not the first and not the last to go off there. See, Ricciardo was wearing a black crash helmet, so I wasn't going mad. The Toro Rosso stopping after about an hour and a half of this morning. Sebastian Vettel out onto the track, and even he and even the Red Bull finding his way onto the gravel, swiftly into the pits as a result of that trip off the track. A little fixture on the rear wing of the Red Bull to stop us all having a peek. Pastor Maldonado trying as hard as he can to get the throttle down, but the grip just wasn't there. The track very, very green. It poured with rain between Thursday and Friday night. A scheduled stop for Lotus, a simulated stop out on track. Jenson Button was the quickest man at the end of the morning session. Adrian Sutil was second fastest. He wasn't finding it all to his liking, and his session curtailed rather early in the afternoon. Grosjean continuing on his way, and when he made the switch to the soft tyres, he came up with the fastest time of the day, a 1:22.7 for the Lotus driver, who completed 88 laps and fared a little better than he did yesterday. Just aero mapping on day 1 was really all Romain Grosjean and Lotus could manage today. They got some quicker runs in, some more mileage on the car, and came up, as I said, with the fastest time of the day, 1:22.7 for Grosjean and the Lotus. And he hands over now to Kimi Räikkönen for the final 2 days here at Barcelona. And what has happened to Pastor Maldonado's Williams? We'll find out as we wrap up the day's testing activities with Simon Lazenby and Johnny Herbert's down in the paddock. And these are the fast times of the day. On the soft tyre, as I mentioned, Romain Grosjean's time. Jenson Button on the medium, though, for McLaren, 4/10 difference. Maldonado went on to the softs for Williams. Sebastian Vettel, 4th fastest. We'll have a look and see weights fuel corrected, how that stacks up against Grosjean. But once again, Red Bull not really chasing the headline times. Adrian Sutil only 62 laps in the day. Guido van der Garde only managed 48 laps, but Nico Rosberg, Fernando Alonso completing their long runs, 120 and 102 laps on the board. Mileage completed, job's a good one, I think, for Ferrari and Rosberg in terms of reliability today, but Grosjean the fastest.
Thanks, Crofty. Thanks, Martin. But unfortunately, for him, that's his weekend over. It is Kimi Räikkönen who takes things over day 3 of the third test, and we are back at 2 o'clock on Sky 3D if you have it. If not, on Sky Sports F1 HD to enjoy all the action there. And there's loads more to come still today. From the track, we've got about half an hour till we go off air here. And following us straight away will be the F1 show, including highlights of the Motorsport Hall of Fame Awards. Myself and Natalie hosted on Monday night. A whole host of stars in there. That man, Nicky Lauda, being inducted. So too was our very own Damon Hill, amongst others. So that to look forward to. In around about half an hour's time, Natalie is back at base with Anthony Davidson, and Ted will be up and down the pit lane and the paddock for you as well. There we go, confirmation, 4:30 for the F1 show. But here today, it is Romain Grosjean who has gone quickest in that Lotus. And we're hoping to hear from Eric Boulier after the break, and maybe from Sebastian Vettel as well. So plenty to stay tuned for. It was a relatively clear afternoon as far as the weather was concerned. There was a little bit of rain towards the end of that afternoon session, much more in the morning. What it's meant, though, on day 2, just to sum it up for you, as you can see there, Romain Grosjean, he tested yesterday, tested today. It's Kimi from now on, but 88 laps. His fastest time on the soft was 1:22.7. Jenson Button suffering a fair amount of graining on those medium tyres. Maybe a cause for concern for McLaren today. A little bit further down, Adrian Sutil. Some problems in the Force India meant that having been confirmed driver in only his second day of testing, he managed to put in just 62 laps. The most mileage going to Nico Rosberg, again adding to over 100 laps that Lewis Hamilton put in yesterday. 120 for him. And Fernando Alonso, it looked like he was the only one out there who was doing some race simulations, Johnny.
Yeah, well, it definitely looked to. He was definitely putting the laps in. That's what he was speaking about to Ted earlier on. And it's something that, in these conditions, I think is a very smart thing to do, is get as much mileage and an understanding of what you have underneath you, and they can have a good chat about it tonight.
What were your impressions of what was going on the track out there today? How much can you read into what the teams were doing?
Interesting. I think if you look at Romain Grosjean, fast, yes. But I think when he did that time, he only did a couple of laps, and then there was quite a big drop-off from that point of view. Jenson and Sebastian were on the mediums, but did that on longer runs. And like you said, the McLaren still seems to have that bit of grain in, which I would imagine is a bit of a concern. But those soft tyres with Maldonado, the same thing. So the mixture of those Grosjean and Maldonado sort of in that mix, I think, is probably not a true indication of where we are. But the McLaren and the Red Bull do seem to be always there or thereabouts.
Yeah, go back to what we're talking about with Jenson Button there and this graining. Why is it happening, do you suppose?
Well, it's obviously the balance they have in the car. Now, this is quite a tough circuit anyway, that turn 3, that long right-hander. It always puts a lot of pressure on the left front. And it's a very hard thing to sort of back it off. We know the weather is very difficult.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the cold conditions, yeah.
Is not working. Hopefully, when that weather comes in, that is something that might come into play and the balance might come to them. There is a good chance that they will have that. And I hope so for Jenson and Sergio, because I think they don't need that grain in for sure.
Mercedes are churning out the laps, aren't they? We spoke to Lewis Hamilton at the beginning of the show. He seemed amazingly relaxed. He took us in to see his new dog afterwards in the motorhome, who's a right little character. I'm sure we'll see more of him as the week progresses and the season progresses. But Nico Rosberg, they were talking about an open exchange of ideas. And they are, as I said, they are really nailing the laps down here. They've clearly got a lot of work to get through. That's how most of the teams, I suppose.
Yeah, they definitely have. And I think, they're on the back foot. Lewis has already said that, so the mileage is a very important factor once again. That seems to be going in the right direction for them. Tomorrow and Sunday is going to be a different situation. I was actually speaking to Jean Verne just before we came in when Ricciardo was doing a pit stop, and he was saying that it's going to be more important really the next couple of days, because these conditions are very, very difficult to really have an understanding of where they are, but also where the car is as well. So with the weather hopefully getting a bit warmer, people like we're seeing here, Nico Rosberg on track, are going to have a better indication of what that car is going to be like, and the serious testing will really, I think, start tomorrow.
How do you think he'll respond Nico Rosberg to driving alongside Lewis Hamilton. I mean, last year, alongside Michael Schumacher, that's a fairly formidable teammate, but so too is Lewis.
Well, Lewis definitely so. He's sort of the new young gun generation that we have in Formula One. Michael was sort of the older generation, but was still there or thereabouts on pace.
But cast a shadow. I suppose that's my point. Is that they're huge names, aren't they?
Yeah, but I think that was a good experience for him to have Michael in the team, understand what it's like to have someone who's quick like he was, but having Lewis in the team, the experience is going to help. But I think it's going to be a very, very more difficult situation for him to sort of tame Lewis. They have that relationship. Lewis was talking about the karting days and everything else and the fun they had together. I think that would be a slightly different situation in this. This is going to be quite a tough battle between the two.
At first glimpse live of Adrian Suttle back in the Force Indies, was saying there were perhaps a couple of issues for the car there, and only putting in 62 laps today. Are you glad to see him back in Formula One?
Yeah, I am, because I was there actually when he was, I think it was a Spiker when he first sort of got involved, and he's a very, very calm guy. He's a pianist, very good on piano, so he has a very sort of...
How's that help?
Well, no, because he's very calm, and that calmness goes into exactly what it's like on a racetrack. Now, we've seen him race before, successfully. He's very fast, very methodical in how he does things, and he's very smart at the same time, so he will fit in very well with the team again.
And Bob was, very open and honest about potential visa issues. I mean, if they can get through that, do you think that's going to pose them any headaches this year?
Well, we can only sort of look into it, so how difficult it can be if you have, different thing. Drink and driving, I think, is a difficult one to get in. So it's something like that, which is very, very different. GBH, I think it is what he's got. So it's quite a different situation. I don't think it's just America. I think there is, to me, Australia and even China. As long as they've looked into it, there isn't going to be an issue.
Which you assume they have.
They've done their due diligence. So. You would feel a little bit daft if they haven't. Just turn up with your passport.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I forget mine. But what it does open up, I suppose, is that. As Bob was saying, that perhaps Jules Bianchi not done for the season yet. Let's go down to that Marussia question down there, because we don't know whether Lewis Ratzier is going to be in the car alongside Max Chilton. So it opens up possibilities, doesn't it? Jules Bianchi, they're looking for another engine supplier next year. Do you think that that could be a reason for them?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're definitely looking into that engine situation for the future. That would be something they'd be definitely looking into. Jules Bianchi seems to be the obvious sort of one after what's happened with himself, with Suttle and Force India. But we'll have to see. I saw there was a tweet, I think, actually, Ratzier done, and he was sort of saying he's trying to sort of get it all sorted as quickly as he possibly can. So it sounds as if he hasn't given up, but we'll have to see if the team have.
But we're keeping options open, aren't we, here? We've been keeping an eye out as well, just to see if we can see those blonde locks of Heikki Kovalainen reappearing. We understand, it's not confirmed, but there is a seat fitting for another tonight. Now, we don't know who another might be. And there ain't Carter Kane as well. We know he brings a lot of money, doesn't he, through Tata?
Yeah, exactly. I haven't heard his name as that strong. It does seem to be, Heikki seems to be the biggest one at the moment. I don't think everybody's just reading into that in a way. He doesn't sort of bring any money to the team. That is something that keeps coming out, that they need the money. So that's where someone like Bianchi would sort of come into it and maybe help them down the line in the future as well. It's a logical one for me, but then Kovalainen, experience-wise, is another logical one, but he doesn't come with the money.
Right, as we were saying, it was a busy day for Nico Rosberg, 120 laps under his belt today. Speaking to Rachel Brooks.
How was that run today?
Good. No, I'm pleased. I mean, it was good to get some wet running in, because Melbourne, it can rain, of course, and until now I hadn't driven in the wet, and I felt very comfortable. It was always pretty quick in the wet also, so that was nice. And then in the afternoon, just doing race simulation type of stuff, and which is important, in preparation for Melbourne, to make sure that the car can get to the end.
A lot of laps, but not up towards the top of the times. Are there things you were working on today, or has there been a problem identified at all?
No, not at all. Just when you're doing race preparation, you run a lot of fuel. Brimmed, nearly, not quite, but anyways. And so then you're not very fast.
We spoke to Lewis earlier, and he said that he's enjoying being teammates with you, and that he's planning a few pranks to play on you this season. And he may have been passing on some duff information so far to have a joke with you. How are you finding being teammates?
Passing on some duff information, what is that?
He said he was telling you things like go full at it into turn 3 and things when he didn't mean it wasn't what you should be doing, but he was trying to have a laugh.
I'm going to have a serious word with him then, because that's not on between teammates. No, but yeah, it's nice to work together again. We had a great time in go-karts, and I'm sure it's going to be good again now.
And the car itself, how are you feeling at the moment? We've obviously just got one day now before the Australian race. Have you got some upgrades coming? Are you hoping for some improvements, or are you fairly happy so far?
I'm pleased, we're making progress. It's been a good winter testing. Difficult to say where we are. We'll see in Melbourne.
We will indeed. Lotus team principal Eric Boulier is alongside. Eric, good to see you again. How's things going?
Cold?
Yeah, it is, isn't it? You were just saying, might as well be at Silverstone.
We said it's warmer.
I'm sure it's warmer in Oxfordshire anyway.
Probably is. How much decent work have you got done today? Roman was quickest out there.
Yeah, I mean, testing is testing. It's just, especially when you have this kind of weather, the right opportunity to be on the track with the right tyres. No, I mean, it went pretty well today. I mean, we did as much as we could with the weather and cope with the weather. And yeah, it's good to be topping the timesheets, but doesn't mean nothing.
Give us a bit of an explanation what Roman has been saying with these conditions, as cool as they are, or as cold as they are. I think cool's the wrong word for it. But what has he been saying has been the difficulties of these tyres in these conditions with the car?
It's quite difficult to make them working in this round of temperature. It's clearly difficult. You have a lot of graining, and these tires are designed for hotter conditions and different tracks. But still we can work and we can still do sim development, data logging, and this kind of stuff.
We're saying that you're one of the few teams that aren't flip-flopping their drivers, alternating them. Was that to give Kimi the best of the weather over the weekend?
No, actually, the plan was done and decided before, and just we had the logic to split our drivers the way we did. It's just to give, when they finish the session, they start the next session, just to keep some workload a little bit less for the guys as well, to keep the seats. It's true that he was not lucky these last 2 days with the weather, but on the other hand, Kimi was not lucky before for other reasons. So all in one, the mileage will be very equal at the end. This is what we want to target.
What type of program are we going to see Lotus do over the coming 2 days, especially with the different conditions? It seems as if it's going to be slightly warmer as well. What programs are you going to go through, but especially what you're going to do on Sunday before we go to Melbourne?
We are going to bring part of let's say Melbourne package over the weekend, and I think bit by bit we're going to just test them, maybe not all in one. We will maybe wait for Melbourne for that.
You've been very open and honest about Roman, and so has he, about the fact that he's been seeing a psychologist. Thanks, Toto. He's been seeing a psychologist, and you're going to assess him as the season goes on. How is he with that, and have you noticed a difference in him?
Yeah, I have to say, the guy is a bit different in the way he's handling things. He's clearly, let's say, more. It's not the right term, but let's say committed and focused, but right enough, not trying too hard. He's a bit different from last year, so I can see that he did work hard. I know the last few months, and it looks like it's starting to pay off.
And what about Kimi? Is Kimi just being Kimi?
Kimi.
Is he here yet?
Is Kimi. I think he still has not arrived yet, but it's okay. Don't worry too much.
Okay. I know you had a word last week with Ted Kravitz, and he said, look, if it was a Grand Prix here tomorrow, where do you think Lotus would finish? And you said podium. All right. Are you still that confident? Obviously, Roman going pretty well today. I mean, what are your thoughts on where you're at, though?
It's just to maybe create some buzz, but it's true that. Today, maybe I'm more confident today than I will be in Melbourne, but yeah, it looks like we could be fighting for some good positions. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, do you agree with that? Do you think that Lotus are going to be right up there this year, Johnny?
Well, I think they are. I think they. We saw you started very well last year. At the end of the day, it seems to be something that's following on this time around. But who do you see are the real tough cookies that you're against? Do you see the Red Bull? Do you see the Ferrari? Which one do you see are going to be your contenders?
I think the combination. I mean, yes, definitely Red Bull will be, I think, against the team to beat.
Yeah. For what reason? Why is that a reason for Red Bull?
The package itself, the team itself. They are working all together with the same driver lineup since so many years that, obviously, even if you have to find, like, from last year to this year, a little gain, and work very hard to find this little gains, there would be the team capable to extract more. But we're gonna give them a hard time, I think.
Absolutely. Eric, thanks very much for your time.
Thank
Best
you
of luck
very
for the
much,
rest of the
Gary.
weekend. We'll
Thank
see you
you
down in Melbourne as well, no doubt. Standing by, triple world champion Sebastian Vettel with Ted.
Yes, thank you very much, Simon. Yes, Sebastian, you are live in 3D. Your nose isn't big enough to be big in 3D.
The camera. Yours is in the camera.
No, mine is not in the camera. That's the point. Now, don't you go pointing like this in 3D. People will be jumping off their sofas. I knew you were going to do that. Okay, listen, tell us about your day.
Yeah, not much to say, really. I didn't do that many laps. I think weather wasn't really good. It's much nicer in Germany, of course. Yeah, it's a shame. It's too cold. The tires are not working properly, so I think everyone is suffering the same kind of problems. You struggle to make the tires last for more than a lap. So it's difficult to compare things that you're testing and compare to, to other teams, to other drivers.
Okay, the team were trying a drag reduction device like the one Lotus have and Mercedes and Sauber. Did they learn much about it? Did you feel the drop in drag?
I didn't see anything.
Of course, you're looking forward. Yeah, it's behind you, yeah.
Was it? Well, I didn't.
Okay, well...
I don't check my mirrors too much.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. You normally don't have to. Just last question then. Where are Red Bull? We spoke to Mark yesterday. He said you've still got a bit of work to do. It's not like you're going to go to Melbourne and blitz everybody. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, of course. Also, I think it's very difficult to know in terms of pace where we are right now. So, of course, we have a rough idea. I think it's fine. I think we're happy with the balance, happy with the way the car behaves. So, yeah, I think that's a positive for us. But whether that's enough or not, we don't know at this stage. So, of course, there's a lot more to do. And I think, to be fair, conditions now are very different to what we will see in Melbourne. So, I don't think it's a surprise if someone all of a sudden deals better with the conditions we face there instead of the cold testing here. And then overall, I think it got a little bit tighter again this year, so it will be close until the end, I guess, and we are not even at the beginning.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to it. Enjoy your last day in the car on Sunday. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Sebastian, love him. He just loves winding Ted up, doesn't he, on camera? Always trying to get the better of each other, those two. It's an interesting point that Sebastian Martin throws up there about, what they're gaining out of this with the conditions. Is there an argument that you've got one in Jerez, you've got two in Barcelona, that perhaps they could go somewhere where there'd be guaranteed warm running? I mean, I'm talking somewhere in the Middle East, for instance.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier on in commentary, and I think the teams did take to Bahrain for a little while, didn't they? I think they had 3 or 4 years there. You get a few sandstorms occasionally, but you'd think it makes sense. We used to go to Kyalami and Rio, which were altogether fun places to go and test, and we do a 10-day test with 2 cars, and maybe just by ourselves as a team, or I mean, the first race I remember in 84, 85, we were in Rio for 3 weeks, 10 days testing, a bit of time on the beach, and then we did the race, but somehow or other that's not available anymore, and here we are in freezing cold Barcelona. But I mean, last year was 20 odd degrees, the track temperature, which was representative. It's just the way it is at the moment. I think it's just the cost of getting, instead of these trucks making their way down here, you've got to put them into crates and stick them on planes, and you can't afford to put them on the sea, you can't afford the time to put them on the high seas, and that's hugely expensive. And of course, if they've got a problem, they can't. I mean, there's a lot of every night there's stuff coming down here to sort these cars out as they're breaking down, having problems. If it's in Bahrain or Abu Dhabi, you lose that facility to an extent, just because of the time change and the time it takes to get there.
Do like the sound of the Copacabana, though.
Yeah, it's quite
cool.
Maybe it's just me.
The other issue you have as well is obviously we saw Red Bull bring in some new pieces, and of course they're a couple of hours away, they can fly them in. Of course, if you're in Bahrain, you can't do that because it's too far away.
Yeah, we were just chatting, Johnny and I, before he came down, about Marussia and what might happen there. It is a rumour at the moment, but which way would you sway? The likes of Carter Kane, the likes of Kovalainen, or even Jules Bianchi?
I can't see how it can be Kovalainen, because they let Glock go, and presumably they've paid Glock because they were in contract, so they've released him, and he's not going to go, okay, I'll just walk off then. I would have thought he's going to want paying to step away from a fixed contract, if indeed it was fixed, but that's my understanding of it. They need somebody coming along with a lot of money.
Yep.
That was Razia, and presumably they're looking for somebody else with a lot of money now.
We have got to go, I'm afraid. Stay tuned, though, because in around about 5 minutes' time on the F1 show, we hope to have Jenson Button live as well. From us, though, it's bye-bye. See you tomorrow.